Hello everyone. Good evening and Tashi Dalek. On behalf of Foundation for Universal Responsibility of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I would like to welcome you all to today's special film screening on America's First Guru as a part of Films of the Spirit Festival curated by Mr. Rajiv Mehrotra. And we are doing this event in collaboration with India International Center, as we usually do. We are privileged to host the Indian premiere of this documentary, which brings life the extraordinary journey of Swami Vivekananda, directed by Mr. Raja Chowdhury Ji. And to briefly introduce, Raja Chowdhury Ji is a distinguished teacher, filmmaker, speaker who seamlessly bridges ancient wisdom and modern science. His life's mission is to awaken human consciousness by integrating the principles of Kundalini Shakti, Tantra, and Kriya Yoga with contemporary insights from neuroscience, biohacking, psychology, inspiring seekers to discover their inner guru. Trained as an architect at London Architectural Association, he initially built a successful career in digital media, receiving a prestigious Webby Award as a director in London and New York. However, following his spiritual calling, he returned to India and embarked on an illustrious career in documentary filmmaking with strong focus on consciousness and spirituality. In 2014, Raja Chowdhury Ji was awarded India's prestigious National Film Award for the Quantum Indians. And later, the film was premiered on the public broadcasting service in the US in 2024. And film has been recognized with several awards like Florida South Asian Film Festival, Cannes World Film Festival, Chicago Filmmaker Awards, Samkara International Film Festival. And the film screening will be followed by discussion with director, Mr. Raja Chowdhury Ji, who is here today. And before we begin, I would like to request my colleague, Tenzin Lagmala, to offer khatak to Mr. Raja Chowdhury Ji on behalf of the foundation. Sir, could you please come here? Thank you, sir, for joining us today here. Please enjoy the film screening. Thank you.
What an amazing, riveting, engaging film from which we learned so much. It isn't easy to sustain 90 minutes of non-fiction and have you completely spellbound. As a filmmaker myself, what can I say?
Thank you.
But infinite applause, and I think he has done Swami Vivekananda proud, and I think he has done India proud with this film. I don't want to dwell too much on his enormous skill as a filmmaker and of the many diverse elements of filmmaking that he has brought so effortlessly into play. I mean, not the least, of course, the character of Swami Vivekananda, but I think we have worked together in the past, and his amazing ability to find abstract, visual correlatives for complex ideas and to evoke them in the audience. So it just doesn't become a mechanistic narrative or physical objects, but gives us an experiential feeling of the ideas that he is talking about and presenting. And I think this so powerfully comes into the film. It's sort of relentlessly brilliant. That was what my sort of feeling was. And I do sort of pray, for all our sakes, that this film is really widely seen in India, both for its message and for its craft. I think that filmmaking in India has much to learn from this. What can I say? Well done, pat on the back, congratulations.
Thank you, Rajiv.
We are really, really, really proud of this work and of you.
Thank you.
And I think much of it stems from the fact that Raja is a sadhaka himself. And he has worked on himself. There is a whole range of, particularly related to Kundalini. So it's an idea that goes over my head, but I know it has a very emphatic place in our traditions and heritage. And so I think he has been able to masterfully internalize many aspects of the teaching and of the life, the struggle, and the sadhana of Swami Vivekananda. And I was wondering, what question could I ask you? I think the film is so complete, it answers all my questions that I may have, except that, one had a sense of, sort of the attraction that Swami Vivekananda represented for women. And I think at the time when women's rights and issues are being, how do I put it, people have struggled to bring them center stage, then it retreats, and then it moves forward again. And so he obviously played a very important seminal role in that, and then I think some of it fell away. What did you think was why this emphasis on women were drawn to him and not men? Not enough men, certainly in the West.
Well, thank you, Rajiv, for that wonderful compliment and all
Not
of
enough,
that.
not enough.
And he is a mentor to me.
Oh.
Without him, I wouldn't have made the film that got me the National Film Award. So thank you. And but it's wonderful to be here, and thank you all for coming. Thank you, everyone. I think that you have to think about what America was like in the 1890s. It was anti-imperial yet capitalistic masculine culture, right? It wanted to conquer the world. It was going to build industry. It was going to do everything. And in fact, the Parliament of Religions was held to show the world that Protestantism, American Protestantism, was the religion to solve the world's problems, right? That's why they created this thing. Yes, bring all the token religions along and show Protestantism as it was the greatest thing ever. And they didn't expect Swami Vivekananda. And literally, he stood up. First of all, he was 6'2", right? Now, a Bengali 6'2", very unusual. And they described it. They said he had a Irish baritone voice. That means he rolled his R's and spoke like this, right? So can you imagine what an impact he had to those 4,000 people when it hit? It must, and it was like boring lecture after boring lecture, and then he stands up, So I think that two things happened. One was, he said there is no sin, there is no punishment, everyone is potentially divine. Nobody had heard this before, right? Just think about it. We are all potentially divine. And women at that time were running civic society, so hospitals, schools, everything was being run by women. So when they heard this, it was like a clarion call to say, look, this is the language we're looking for. And it had come from Emerson and all of that. So I think it was a ripe soil, as Swami Sarvapriyananda said, that was so fertile for that moment. And I think that the women just took to it and said, this is the culture we need. And in fact, if you look at America today, they estimate about 55 million people practice yoga in America right now. So after the Catholic Church, it's probably the largest denomination in America, and 80% are women doing it, right? So we're seeing the same thing. It is a tool for empowerment, for liberation, for freedom, and I think that's what feminism took from it and ran with it,
I think that also sort of as filmmaker, do you sort of visualize and structure these amazing counterpointing counterpointing, yes, visuals, which I mean, I just found absolutely evocative and stunning. If there was a comment I had on the film that would make it a little better, it was breathless in its engagement. And at the end of it, I felt a little exhausted. Because it's just, you know, you need a film that just draws you in and holds you for 90 minutes. I would have liked a few breathers, a few pauses. But, I mean, that's just incidental. It was so powerfully engaging. And also that, I mean, an absolutely amazing performance from the person, Samrat Chakravarti. And how, and the ways in which you gave us a mise-en-scène of America at that time, and the visuals, you know, some of which were filmed in New York today,
yes.
and you know, the images of him sitting under a tree and meditating with what was going on behind him, or in the metro, and he just does a namaste to someone. I think these were such amazing flourishes that made real for the audience as to you know, what was being said and what was the felt experience of that time. And I think that is far, far, far more than 99% of documentaries of this kind are able to achieve, because it isn't purely the verbal narrative or the images that, you know, buildings and structures and people talking that give you a sense. So we actually felt the narrative.
It was an experiment we tried because, first of all, it is said that at that time, when everybody was wearing gray and dark clothes, he wore this outfit all the time in New York. He went around with this turban on all the time. So we did an experiment. The first day, we put the actor Samrat Chakravarti, a very good actor in New York, we put him on the streets of New York and to see what would happen. And we just followed him with the camera. People were bowing to him. People were coming up for blessings from him. People were coming and saying, "Are you a holy man? You know, where are you from?" You know, and it was wonderful. So we thought that, look at that how open people are to magical engagement if they see it, you know, without caricaturing it, you know. And so we decided to do it in modern New York to show that Swami Vivekananda would be fine today as he was back in 1893. You know, it was just as good for us. And it was a great experiment because, you know, we didn't have the budget to do period piece dramas in Greenwich Village and all of that. So this was good. It was a very good experiment. We enjoyed it. I take your point on the relentless storytelling, but trying to squeeze this story into 90 minutes, you know, first of all the Swamis criticized, but you didn't mention this, you didn't say this, you didn't do this, you know. Then I need a biopic, a 10-hour biopic on this one, you know. So I tried to squeeze it all in there.
But I think, you know, that in all art, in some senses, is about identifying significant details that paint the portrait. And I think you did a marvelous job of that. And I, of course, have my favorite thing of what you missed. I'd love to have seen him smoke the cigar.
Yes. He was a hookah smoker. Right. And in America, what we don't know is that when he said I was spending £1 a day, half of that was on cigarettes. You know? So we don't
I think at the center in California they have a cigar that he smoked. Yes. And sometimes they're a little embarrassed about it.
In fact, it is the only order in India where the monks are allowed to smoke cigarettes. You know, it is the only order today. You know, I remember when I first came to Belur Math many years ago as a young man, and I remember these Swamis were standing there and they pulled out a pack of 555 from their shirt and were smoking cigarettes outside. I thought, Swami, you know, and eating fish.
And I think that you know, the message of inclusiveness,
this was
you know, so powerfully again both visualized and articulated, has given this film so much more significance for our times, and as it has on the idea of Vedanta as, I don't want to say opposed to, but an emphasis of the Vedanta. I'm looking for
He
a
said
suitable
something.
word without saying versus or opposed to, because Ramakrishna was a bhakta, and his disciple became a jnani, and I think that in itself is of enormous significance. And as a sort of how do I put it, a Hindu Buddhist myself, I was also happily noted that behind Swami Sarvapriyananda's image there was a statue of the Buddha.
Yes, yes.
And that Vivekananda famously said, the Buddha is my master and Ramakrishna is my Ishta. And how that idea of agnosticism with the bhakti and then the four yogas that emanated and derived from the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. I think that some of these just sort of come in at subtle levels and you don't consciously say, that's what he's saying and that's what he's pointing to. But it reassures you of the value and the impact of the Vedanta. Tell me that since you've engaged so vigorously with it, we sort of get the sense that with the NRI community in the United States, the Vedanta aspect is being somewhat diluted and replaced by a more ritualistic approach to Hinduism.
Well, two things. One is that he said something very important in his speech. He says, we accept all religions as true, right? He didn't say we just tolerate. He said we accept. Acceptance is more important than tolerance. That was a very important point he was making. And that means that the ideal of Vedanta is a universal Brahman pervading all reality, which is a cause, right? And we are all like blind men in the elephant trying to figure out what it is, and that's what he was really preaching. But the second thing he was doing was he was saying that, look, in a time, and 1893 and today don't seem so different, do they? It's sad. It's not so different. Intolerance, divisions, and so he was inclusive to the hilt, He didn't care whether you were... In fact, what we didn't mention in the film is that all these great authors were all homosexuals. And they found sanctuary in the Vedanta society, So I think it was a liberation psychology that was so needed and still needed today, that lets us not only tolerate. You see, the problem with toleration is that it's like, I am superior, you are less. That is what tolerance implies. Acceptance means we are all children of God, we are all divine. And that was a very different take that he had. But I did not want to preach in this film. I let him do the preaching. So that was very important for me also, was that he wrote enough. And all of you know, he had 8 volumes in his work. We went through everything, looking for the nuggets, right? But he was, he said so many beautiful things. And we tried to bring out the best in this film,
In fact, it went further than acceptance. I think that with the Ramakrishna mission, it was a celebration of diversity. And it has somewhat faded, but till not so long ago, they would actually celebrate the festivals and rituals of different traditions.
I do miss that because, I grew up an expat living abroad. And we'd come to India, and to us, celebrating Eid or Ramadan or this was a natural thing. We'd all do it, right? It wasn't that now, just like in America, Republicans and Democrats don't talk to each other, right? The world is too polarized now, And if anything if I can contribute to that dialogue a little bit with this film, I've done my job. And the good news is that 500,000 people saw it in America in the first few months. So I'm very happy. And we're putting it on YouTube. It'll be on publicly free, available to everybody. So we'll let it get out there. We'll do it.
I don't want to don't want to hog an old friend all to myself. So it's 8:20, and so for at least 10, 15 minutes, because I know people tend to sort of start fading from at 8:30. So we'll open up the floor to questions, and I think a one-sentence comment, half a sentence self-introduction, and 2 sentences for a question. And so, on the first row, and this is a lady I know.
Hello.
Hello, Raja. Thank you ever so much for this wonderful, wonderful treat. I just have a question and a comment. The question is, when you engaged with Swami Vivekananda, what questions did you ask him? And the second is, I'm so happy you brought in the sartorial element, because it's got that sense of play as well.
In fact, that was so brilliantly done when he was being dressed up,
Yes.
Being sort of ready to travel to the United States, and then following the time when he was ill, and then they tying the turban and dressing him up again.
Instead of that very ascetic image, of sort of, it's engaging with the world, and many gurus are trying to recreate it. They're called designer gurus today. But the fact that he was able to carry that with such deep spirituality at the same time and a sense of detachment. So just to ask you, what were your questions?
Just remind me what your question was.
My question was, what did you, when you were engaging with him, what were your questions for Swami Vivekananda?
So I first met Swami Vivekananda when I was probably 6 or 7 years old. And my father was a Vivekananda Bhakt, right? He went to Scottish church as well, my father. So for us, it was natural to have a conversation without understanding what it was, right? But as a young man, when I looked around for a philosophy to follow, right? There was nobody else like Vivekananda, Nobody else that could talk to a young man or woman and give you a path, right? That doesn't require superstition, that doesn't require dogma or creed or anything. Anyone can do it, right? And that's why he was so popular in America, because he taught a yoga that anybody could do. You could do bhakti, you could do jnana, you could do raja, you could do karma. It doesn't matter. All is Vedanta, right? In fact, today, Swami Medhananda called it Vijnana Vedanta. That means discerning Vedanta of both embodied consciousness and things. So the question I would have asked him, or I did ask him, was that what is the message we can tell today? Because we are just, you think that in 130 years we'd have evolved into the Aurobindian idea of a psychic evolution, but it didn't happen. We're stuck with the same polarity, same fear, same capitalism, same everything, right? So the question then is, what now? What would you do today? Would you be doing AI and neuroscience like Sarva Priyananda is doing? Would you be doing that? Would you be doing activism and fighting for rights? Would you be taking on the government? What would you do? Right? What would you do today? So those are the questions I was asking.
Just in case those of you missed the Hitchcockian presence of Raja in the film Thrice. Do you remember?
My Hitchcock moment.
Do you remember all 3? Maybe there were more.
One.
Well, when you were walking across
yes, and the voice
street,
of Ramakrishna.
the voice.
Of Ramakrishna.
No, there was one more I seem to remember. Anyway, okay, any more questions? Next question. Sir.
Did I answer your question, ma'am? Did that answer? Yes, good.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for your effort. I just have a very simple question.
What's your name?
My name is Rishabh, and I'm always a seeker. So, a very simple question is, as I study from Vedanta, and I have been studying at the age of 18, I was so blessed to learn about it. My interest was always that every major movement of Hinduism always had an all-encapsulated feeling of, say, the Brahman, as you say. I was always very curious to feel, why isn't one movement just enough? So after, in the West only, so after Vedanta, there came the whole Ananda movement with Yogananda Paramahansa, which again has that universalism and a great line of gurus. And then in the modern time, which you would call more symbolic, maybe Isha with Sadhguru, and maybe there's after 50 years there'll be something more which will again be universal in a unique way or different way. So I'm just so curious as a young person to understand how is it that every few years we have a new movement by a new enlightened master in some way for their followers, but why isn't one movement just enough? I mean, because everyone is a great scholar and a great teacher in their own way. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think that none of the teachers you have mentioned are Vedantins. Right? They are yogis. Okay? But all yoga leads to Vedanta. Right? Vedanta means the end of quest, knowledge, the end. Right? What is the end of knowledge? The end of knowledge is self-realization. Right? Self-realization. That I am that. I am that. What path I take to that is multiple. I think Sarvapriyananda said that we have 7.5 billion religions in the world today. You know, because we live in an age of narcissism where everybody's about me, my device, my thing, my religion, my guru, my this. So it's not so much whether the gurus are changing and moving, it's what's happening to us that is the real issue, right? Are we seeking the truth? Are we seeking enlightenment? Are we seeking this universal idea? So if I look at the world as a karma yogin, right, do I see people suffering and tolerate it? He couldn't take it. He came back and fought poverty day and night, right? He fought for women, education, right? If I look at bhakti, right? Should I become superstitious? He was anti-superstition. He fought superstition with like tooth and nail, right? Forget your astrology, forget your rishi, forget your this, throw it all away, all rubbish. Even forget reincarnation, doesn't matter, you know? When it came to Raja Yoga, yes, prana. Yogananda was a Raja Yogi, right? Jagi Vasudevan is the Raja Yogi. These are breathing gurus. Then bhakti is also mantra, right? So you can follow any path you want. Jnana Yoga, which he did, is the hardest. Contemplation, thinking, you know, discerning. So there's no limit to the paths to that realization. But Vedanta is the act of pursuing that realization. So when you do it for that purpose, not for what trends in evolving psychology we're going to buy into.
If I could just add to that briefly, and I think that one of the many facets that made Swami Vivekananda unique and the Ramakrishna mission as an order in India unique was this idea of service, of seva. And I think we often forget that the Ramakrishna mission is one of the great successes of our times, that 140 years or whatever, you know, that it's been around. It's essentially democratic. They elect their president. They celebrate diversity. And the core of their practice is seva. And within the institution, as Raja was saying, that you have if you're a bhakti yoga, you manage the temple. If you're a karma yoga, you're sent out to do education where the Nakshalites are, and so on and so forth. And I work with the Dalai Lama, and he and my first teacher was Swami Ranganathananda, the Ramakrishna mission, and my subsequent teacher became very good friends. It's very rare that if you move from one teacher to the other, there is a great sense of camaraderie between them. And just to illustrate in the words of the Dalai Lama, is that each one of us needs a different mental diet. And very so important. We find these mental diets in diversity. And don't forget that when I mentioned, I flagged this idea of the Buddha, and this is not the context to dwell on that, but the fact that they say that the Buddha was my Ishta, an agnostic, disciple of a bhakta, and how that was reconciled. But that's a discussion for another day. Next question.
No, before you go there, I wanted to just say one thing to your previous question, which is that I'm an initiator of the Ramakrishna mission. And my Swami was Swami Adiswarananda. But I had many teachers. And I have practiced bhakti, I have practiced jnana, I have practiced. So Swami Sarva Devananda, who you saw in the story, said something very important. He says, in a 24-hour day, you cannot be one yogi. You cannot just be a bhakti yogi all day. You have to do karma sometimes. You have to do jnana sometimes. You're going to read books. You're going to be a family man. You're going to do different things. So to be a yogi, the best description of yoga I ever heard was from Sri Aurobindo, which is the integral yoga. That to be an integral yogi is the way to live life. And so what Swami Vivekananda was preaching was integral yoga. That means practice all 4 yogas, and then Vedanta is your own outcome. It'll happen for you. And you don't, whether it comes through Ganesha or Ma Durga or Brahman, it doesn't matter, or nothing, Shunya, the void, doesn't matter. You will go there, and that's the most important thing.
So the little secret is that we're hoping in the next few years to see a film by Raja on Sri Aurobindo.
That is my next plan.
Okay, next question. Sorry. So, I'll look that way in a soon.
Okay. We'll take him first and then you after. Okay. One in the back there.
It's a very small question. My name is P.M. Narayanan and I am a journalist working in Delhi. So ever since I heard about Vivekananda, I've been hearing this one sentence, sisters and brothers of America, and that catch the whole country on fire. So my question is, was it so kind of catching at that time? Why is it so kind of impressive for that society? Because there was Bible and there is a kind of, camaraderie and the sisterhood,
No, I understand
brotherhood, everything is there.
I do understand.
Why is it so important?
But let's take context again. Let's take context, okay? You're at a conference where everybody is talking about their religion, their ideas, how great they are, right? We Christians are this, we are that. And then this one man, after a full day of that, comes up and bows to everybody and says to them, sisters and brothers of America. It was like somebody just took a heavy load off everybody's chest. And so you can imagine the hearts opening just then, in that moment, right? So it was a great opening, and it is said that this comes from his bias towards Freemasonry and Brahmo Samaj, that it came from that, this idea of brotherhood and sisterhood. It comes from that. But you can see that he saw everybody as his brother and sister. So everybody just suddenly became equal in front of him, And I think that was a remarkable use of language. He was a great semiotic speaker. He could speak well, he could speak well. Definitely.
Not to mention it was sisters first. Rajiv, please.
Yeah, hi,
He got
I'm
the girl
Rajiv.
straight away.
Hi, I'm Rajiv
Hi,
Berman.
hi.
This question, being a Rajiv, is to Rajiv actually. Rajiv, I've known you as a great disciple of, a great believer in Buddhism, and also you are so well versed with Vedanta. How did the two merge for you? Trying to understand that.
Well, I think as Raja pointed out, we each need different mental diets, and there are many differences between Vedanta and Buddhist ideas. I mean, on the very concept of shunya, it's not the void as is understood with Vedanta. There isn't a concept of a soul as in Vedanta philosophy. And however, I think at the everyday aspect of the aspirations of Vedanta, which is to be, in everyday jargon, a good human being, I think some of the one of the elements of genius which we consider Buddhism has and which actually Vivekananda offered to the community was method. Because what had preceded it was really a lot of wisdom. So you could hear a great Swami, you could hear a great master speak, or even a motivational speaker today, and be deeply impressed by them. But the challenge was that how do you so deeply internalize that it becomes a reflex response? And I think that what Swami Vivekananda did was to offer the method simultaneous to the wisdom. And if there was another scene that I'd like to have seen in the film, though he did it with his foot touching Vivekananda when he first goes in. But much later, there was this very dramatic moment in Swamiji's life where he wants the experience. And so he goes to Ramakrishna and said, "Give me an experience of the divine." And so he goes up to the divine, and so Ramakrishna says, "Well, go up and ask for anything you want." And he is unable to ask for anything for himself. And that's a very powerful moment that sort of...
we call him a Vairagi,
yeah, so
complete Vairagi.
So this embodies this aspect of selflessness and service. So there are many facets that unite.
Yes.
But at the same time, I think they happily can comfortably coexist. Which is why, just a little aside if I may, that with Swami Ranganathananda from High Received Diksha, in the initial stages, after a while, he said, look, your proclivity is more as is articulated by the Buddha. And that's why they, many of the monks will have a statue of the Buddha in their premises.
Always.
They don't particularly talk about it because at the purely intellectual level, it's complex. But once you engage in the sadhanas of it, I think not that all paths lead to the same God, as we Buddhists understand it, as is proposed by the Ramakrishna mission and Ramakrishna, but that's really, ultimately semantic. It really has to do with, like, he makes a brilliant film because he's a sadhaka. He connects to, he feels experientially what he's doing. So I think if we go to the level of lived experience, where the sense of the self, whether offered to God, whether offered in karma, or whether discovered through wisdom, is the ultimate liberation, especially when it manifests in altruism. And I think the most important factor that unites these is altruism, compassion, service, seva, thinking of the other, always, so that your own sense of self, the I, me, mine, diminishes.
May I make a comment
Yes,
on
of course.
that, if you don't mind? On your question, right? Both Vedanta and Buddhism have two characteristics that, especially in Vedanta, which philosophically we'd call idealism and nihilism. The idealism in Vedanta is that we are moving towards perfection. We are moving towards a Brahman. We are moving to a great universal mind that is the mind behind everything, right? The Buddha's philosophy removes that causality as the reason for its being, but both also practice nihilism. Nihilism means I am not this body, I am not this suffering, I am not this mind, I am not... So Vedanta also, if you look at Nirvana Shatakam or any of those things, you will see very similar things between Buddhism and Hinduism, Vedanta, that allow us, so you could approach bhakti the same way, right? If I worship Kali, it's a nihilistic approach. That means this is not real, cut it all off. Let go. If I approach it from devotion to Krishna, it's much more God, the aspiration, the ideals, all those things, no? So today, I think these semantic differences and end-game differences don't matter. It's how you serve mankind, what you do. And that's what I agree with that completely. That's what he showed us.
Except just to add, and this is another conversation for another day.
Deep
I think it's the Vedantic misunderstanding of Buddhism when they say that it's nihilistic. It's not. I think that's a very important...
it's actually positive psychology.
Well, we'll discuss that some other time. Next question. Let me look at this side. Yes, sir.
At the outset, huge congratulations, sir. It was so fascinating.
Thank you.
And as said by Rajiv, sir, nothing to add in that much. My question is, one of the great relevance of Swamiji is in today's world is critical thinking.
Is
And
what?
Critical thinking. That's because of his sense of inquiry, the way he was putting the questions, he reached the pinnacle of his life. So my question is, where do we, fail to institutionalize that thing, critical thinking, that we saw the movie, and what's that missing link that, on the stage it's there, but by the time I will go out of this place, somewhere that thing will go away, somewhere that thing will fade, because, and why I'm putting this question is that because the kind of bipolar world that we see, I think if critical thinking would have been institutionalized, I think the world would have been a better place. So where do we miss that thing? How do we fail in doing that?
So you have to balance critical thinking, which is the part of the Hamsa or the discernment or Vijnana Vedanta, right? You have to balance that with bhakti, with service, with seeing everybody as that divine, that spark in everybody. When you do that, right, then first of all, you can't hate anybody, right? So you can't choose an entire group of people to say, I hate them all, right? Or your religion is wrong and my religion is right, or your guru said this and my guru doesn't agree with that. You can't do that. You can't do that. So that's discerning, vijnana, vairagya, just detached observation, right? But what he was also saying was that the only true way to wake up is to see the divine in every being, in everyone. And when you do that, how can you make anybody suffer? How can you see anybody suffer? You have to serve. And those two balancing things, heart and head have to balance, right? This is what he was saying. Thank you all for staying so long. Normally people have left by now.
I mean, this is so irresistible.
Hello, my name is Sumiran.
Hello.
And I have a comment I thought was very sweet, almost very cute, that when you spoke of Vivekananda ji having a photographic memory, you showed a little glimpse of an elephant, because elephants are supposed to have memories by which they don't forget. So I thought that was a very sweet, cute depiction. The question I have is, would you ever make future features on him where perhaps it's tailored to children, or it's taking a deeper dive into one of the many talks he wrote, so that we could experience those talks as if we were actually there listening to them? So like a Vivekananda series.
Well, I hope other filmmakers will do that. That's not my job.
He's got one life for now. Next reincarnation.
You see, what you're talking about is, slightly productizing this film into a much bigger story, right? And that's not why I did this. I did this because this was an important story to tell at this moment in America and here, right? And now it ripples, I'm very happy, right? And if it causes conversations like this, very happy, right? If it makes everybody stop and think, should we be tolerant, should we be intolerant, should we educate women, should we take girl children and do something with them, I am very happy, right? But I've done my karmic bit right now. So the next story is to now look at, that's what we were talking about, is that I want to do a film on Sri Aurobindo and the mother, because that was an uncelebrated experiment of integrating Swamiji, Western occult mysticism, ideas in a wonderful, different way, and an experiment in living in integral yoga that Auroville and Aurobindo Ashram tried to be. and still trying. And then California Institute of Integral Studies is trying to be. So that's another story I'd like to look at. Next story, let's move on.
Okay, one final question, and then we will wind up.
What is your name?
Combe Carpentier, and I would like to ask you from a historical critical viewpoint. I was very interested in the fact that you did this extensive research into Vivekananda's mission in the US. Have you been confronted, and this is curiosity, with the people who have basically tried to undermine the legend? You know, there was a book a few years ago.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I am very interested to know if you interacted with them, if you find that kind of counter-narrative, and if you were able to convince anybody that they were wrong about the kind of image they had tried to project as part of the so-called Western, purely intellectual, what you might call cynical criticism.
It's a complicated subject because when you deal with religious ideas like homosexuality, or you deal with war, or justifying warfare in the name of somebody like Swami Vivekananda, right? One of the biggest think tanks in India is a military think tank based on his philosophy. You know, if there was a grave, would he roll in the grave? I want to know, you know, I want to understand. He never preached. He did say some interesting things. He said that he would like to see India have an Islamic body and a Hindu soul. He wanted that, right? So he wanted the strength of the Mughals and the Islamic idea, but the spirituality of the Hindu, you know, he thought that was a good thing. So the question is that if within the community itself, if I have to pander to everybody, we never make a film, right? So you choose carefully, but you keep going. And you tell your own story. Unfortunately, I have to choose what to tell, right? Yes, there were many controversial things about him, his life, you know, and, you know, he died at 39. Can you imagine any human being accomplishing all this by 39? You know, I'm 60, and I wish I had done even half of, you know, a quarter of what he has done, you know. So I think that I accept and agree, look at all of that, but we have telling a particular story. And that story has nothing to do with whether he was queer, whether he had this, whether he had that. It didn't matter, you know. And I think that those kind of things in American academia and all do sell more books and they get more attention, so you end up with a lot of rubbish also. You know? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. This was masterful.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And we are waiting for the next film.
Yes.
And with a prayer, and it really is a prayer because, you know, we have been trying ourselves to get this film more widely seen against some resistance. I'll only go that far. Your film.
Oh.
But congratulations, and I will
We have a saying in the Ramakrishna family. We have a saying in the Ramakrishna family that if Swamiji wants it to be seen, it will be seen. Thank you so much, Raji, for having me. And thank you all for coming. Thank you. Thank you.